Hello, I'm WWE superstar Titus O'Neil, and today I'm coming to you as a neighbor. You owe it to yourself and those you love to get tested now. Get the care you need and protect your family. Hillsborough County is offering free coronavirus testing and no health insurance is needed. It costs you nothing to get tested. Visit hcflgov.net/staysafe for more information and have a reservation made today. Share this with a neighbor, and let's come together as a community and keep fighting to get through this. Together, we will come back stronger. God bless.
Hillsborough County, along with local and federal health experts, are encouraging residents to wear cloth face masks to cover their nose and mouth when in public to help stop the spread of COVID-19. There are not enough surgical face masks for everyone, and available ones should go to healthcare workers and first responders. It's easy to make your own face mask out of common household items. The CDC and U.S. Surgeon General say you can use an old scarf, bandana, or make one using a t-shirt plus 2 rubber bands. Cut part of the t-shirt into a square, fold it from the bottom to the middle, then from the middle to the top. Repeat those steps one more time, then add a rubber band to each side. Bring each end to the middle, then secure around your face. They should fit snugly but comfortably. Cloth face coverings should not be placed on children younger than 2 years of age or people who have trouble breathing. The CDC emphasizes that while wearing a face mask, you should still practice social distancing, stay 6 feet apart from others, and continue other preventative measures such as frequent hand washing. We encourage you to visit hcflgov.net/staysafe for up-to-date information.
Flossing in the morning is a really great way to keep your teeth healthy and start the day. But when you're through, here's what you do. Throw it in the trash, don't flush it. There's a problem lots of people don't know, called sanitary sewer overflow. A condition buried deep in the ground, inside a pipe where bad clogs are found. It's a problem we can all help solve, so throw it in the trash, don't flush it. Baby wipes, bandages, cotton pads, paper towels, dental floss, clog up bad. Medicines, kitty litter, cotton swabs, hair. Throw them in the trash, don't flush it. It just takes a second to do the right thing, so toss it and let's keep our pipes clean. Throw it in the trash, don't flush it. If it's not toilet paper, don't flush it. Even if it says you can, don't flush it. If you're having any doubts, don't flush it. One more time, don't flush it.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. This is the Affordable Housing Advisory Board meeting, April 12th. It's a virtual, combination hybrid virtual in-person meeting, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. For those of you that are virtually attending, you should see, hopefully, a flag in your background. If you don't, you can see the flag on my screen. I'd like to ask everyone to stand if possible, and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Can we get a roll call vote, please? A roll call, please.
Janegua.
Who's speaking?
This is Natasha. I'm on the line.
Thank you.
Overman.
Here.
Abel. Here. Jackson Sims.
Present.
Hudson.
Here.
Rosenwasser.
Present.
Goods.
Present.
Combs.
Here.
Hollis. Burton.
Here.
O'Donnelly. Nieves. Strom.
Here.
And do we have Mr. Powell on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. And county staff, Cheryl Howell
Here.
and Nancy Takamori.
Here.
Okay, and we're missing Mayor Lott. Mayor Lott is not here today as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us today. We do have 15 minutes set aside for public comment this morning. Did we have anyone sign up for public comment? Natasha?
No, ma'am, we did not have anyone sign up for public comment today.
All right, great, thank you. Because we do not have currently a in-person quorum, we are going to need to defer the approval of the minutes for December 7th, January 11th, February 8th, and so we'll defer that to next month's meeting, and hopefully next month we can actually have a in-person quorum. I will say that the Board of County Commission had a meeting last week, and it was the first meeting where all the board members were present. So we are making progress with the appropriate precautions to make sure that we're actually keeping people safe. So I thank you all that are able to come in today. Today, the next item on the agenda is my report. However, the first item on that is a refresher by Helen Farris, our Deputy County Attorney, to update us and to remind us of the importance of paying attention to the sunshine laws and what those rules look like. Is Helen Farris with us?
Yes, I'm here, Commissioner.
Excellent. You're recognized. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Again, my name is Helen Farris. I'm Deputy County Attorney, and I'd like to give you a brief overview of the Sunshine Law. And basically, the Sunshine Law says that all meetings of any public board or committee at which official action should be taken are public meetings at all times, and reasonable notice must be given. So what is a meeting subject to the Sunshine Law? And this is important, it's any gathering of 2 or more members at the same board or commission to discuss some matter which foreseeably action will be taken by that board. So it includes, subcommittee meetings, and it's any gathering, whether formal or casual. The basic 3 requirements of the Sunshine Law is that it must be open to the public. Therefore, you could not have a sunshine law meeting in a private club, for instance. The public has to have access. Reasonable notice must be given, and the statute requires that written minutes be taken. A lot of boards and committees will tape record their meeting, which is fine, but the statute actually requires written minutes. What else is subject to the sunshine law? It would include phone calls, letters that go back and forth, things of that nature. But in this day and age of the explosion of social media, it is so easy now for people to communicate. So you need to be careful if you were to put something on your Facebook post about some issue that the AHAB may discuss or is planning to discuss, and you post something or your views or your votes, and then somebody else on the same board comments back, that could be an issue. So just be careful about the social media platforms. How about members of different boards? Generally speaking, a county commissioner can talk to somebody on city council. They're not on the same board or commission. I always caution, however, that on a lot of boards, some other boards, you might have a commissioner and a city council member on that board, and therefore the same restriction would apply, that they could not discuss something that could come back to their boards for action. I get asked a lot about social events. You can still socialize together. I tend to say be wary about having lunch meetings and things of that nature, but as long as you're discussing the Bucs Super Bowl win or something that's not going to come back to the AHAB, then there would not be a prohibition. Does the sunshine law require an agenda be written? No. Several years ago through the legislator, there was a bill that would prohibit a sunshine board from discussing anything that was not on the agenda. Luckily, that did not make it through to law because, as the commissioners know, during public comment at board meetings, citizens might bring up something that the board may want to take action on or to discuss. So you have the leeway to talk about things that are not on the agenda. The public's right to participate was added to the statute in 2013. I was glad to hear that you do have time for public comment. The board can have some rules as far as the process for signing up for public comment, a set aside time for the public comment period, as well as a time for each person's to give their public comment. So that now is actually in the law. I'll briefly talk about notice. You've got excellent staff that will make sure that your meetings are in a public place, your meetings are properly noticed. A rule of thumb is 24 hours notice. It's always better to give more notice. And I've used this example, obviously now for a long time. I was pulling into the building in 2011 and when the September 11th. And when I'd heard on the radio what was happening, when I got up to my office, the county attorney at the time called me down there and said, the board needs to meet in 15 minutes. So we used communications, got out to the media. I believe the sheriff and the clerk attended. The meeting was whether or not to close the building. So you can see that is an extreme example, and people hate it when the lawyer says reasonable because it depends on the circumstances. But in that extreme situation, that was reasonable notice. That's it in a nutshell. I am more than happy to take any questions if anybody has any. And again, Nancy is right down the hall from me, and if anything comes up in the course of your deliberations, I'm always available to provide assistance into sunshine law matters.
Excellent, thank you very much. Are there any questions? I don't see any hands raised.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yes, I see two. Mark Rosenwasser, you're recognized. And
Thank you. I'd like to thank the county attorney's office. There have been at least one time that a business association that I'm involved in arranged for a meeting with Commissioner Overman, and being unaware, I was very thankful, not completely aware of the rules, and the county attorney's office called me and told me not to participate, not to discuss it, and they're a great resource, so I thank you very much.
Mary Helen Farris and I speak on a regular basis. It's like, okay, can I do this? Can I do this? Because
Right.
there's lots of rules for us, the county commissioners in general, but also as board members, we still fall under the Sunshine Law. In addition to that, I frequently see that in error, individuals will reply all to Natasha or to Ms. Howell, and or to any of the staff, or just to respond in general. And I would advise you to not do that. Please be very careful to reply back directly to the person with the county staff.
Correct.
And not respond to everyone, even though it's kind of nice to know that everybody's going to be here or not. Just to be on the safe side, it's wise to communicate directly with the staff when they have a question. Liz, did you have a question, Ms. Strong?
Yes, I did. And sorry, if anyone can teach me how to change my name so I don't look so informal, I would be open to doing that. But my question is, several of us are non-voting members of this board, and I'm wondering whether the sunshine rules apply to us the same as to voting members.
It does. It does, because even if you can't cast a vote, you can still weigh in on the decision-making process.
Okay, great question. Great question, Ms. Strong.
Very good.
Any other questions?
I'd like to ask a question.
Go right ahead, Ms. Burton, you're recognized.
Okay, thank you. So I love using social media because a lot of members of the community is not able, maybe unaware about things that are being discussed in government. So say if you use them for, say, a PSA on social media, would that be a violation?
The only way it would be a violation is if you were to post something that had to do with business of the AHAB and another AHAB member then replied back to you. If it's a one-way communication, you would be fine.
Okay, thank you.
So Ms. Burton is a good example because I follow your posts on a regular basis. I have to be very careful when I comment on any of them if it has anything to do with affordable housing. But right. I will tell you, I appreciate your posts because you do inform the public quite well of the issues that not only we're addressing here, but other places. And I want to appreciate the work that you do on social media. So thank you. Any other questions? I don't see any other hands raised, but like I said, it's difficult to see them here. Okay, with that, I will go to the next item unless there's any other questions. Thank you, Ms. Farris. I really appreciate the update. That was very helpful. My update really is very limited today, other than the fact that we've got a very important item coming up next with Jim Taylor from the county's Governmental Relations is going to update us on what's happening in Tallahassee, and as well as in Washington as it pertains to affordable housing. And there's a lot of moving parts right now. So I would strongly urge those of you that have the time, 10 o'clock each week, the Sadowski affiliates have their conference call updating on what's going on in the legislative affairs area that impacts the Sadowski Trust. In addition to that, the Florida Housing Coalition has a series of workshops and updates that they're hosting right now that it would be beneficial to all of our members to get on their list so that you're aware of those workshops because it brings you up to date on things that do impact the work that we do here on a regular basis. And then lastly, I had the pleasure on Friday to participate and cut the ribbon. I was privileged enough to have an opportunity to actually cut the ribbon for our first Hope Trust recipient of Sable Place 2. This project, in partnership with Blue Sky Communities, as well as many collaborators on this, but also more importantly, or as importantly, with Metropolitan Ministries, they put together a great program of partnering together to transition individuals from homelessness to home secure. On-site case management with the HUG group and with Metropolitan Ministries and case management to assist 112 families get settled into a new place to live, and it is beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. It also sits not far from the HART stop for 2 routes on Martin Luther King, although the Williams Road stop has been eliminated. There is decent sidewalk on the way to MLK to allow individuals that live there that need transit for being able to connect to the world, whether that be employment or school or hospitals or doctor's appointments. It's doable. Excuse me. So with that, excuse me, I'll turn this over to Jim Taylor. Jim, are you there?
Commissioner, I think we have Lauren Stork on the line. Lauren?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry to disappoint Commissioner Overman. I'm sure you're looking forward to seeing Jim's face. But good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. As Commissioner stated, I will be providing just update at the federal level and the state level of what's been going on with affordable housing. I'll start with the federal level. Back at the end of last month, the eviction moratorium was extended through the end of June 30th. And what this does is it protects tenants from eviction for non-payment of rent. So if you owe rent, it doesn't forgive the debts, but it does protect you from receiving an eviction notice. The most recent COVID relief bill that passed also provides an additional $25 billion in funding for emergency rental assistance. This is going to flow directly to the states and also local governments with more than 200,000 population. And this can be used for up to 12 months for overdue rent and utility payments from the beginning of the pandemic or for future bills. In addition to that, the president just rolled out his proposed infrastructure plan. And while nothing, that will change tremendously, but in it, he does have a $213 billion proposal to offer cities federal dollars to encourage them to ease zoning rules that are driving up housing costs. And what this would do is lead to the construction, rehab, or preservation of more than 2 million affordable housing units. And in addition to that, the proposal has a new competitive grant program that would induce these state and local governments to scale back the zoning and the land use policies, in addition to $40 billion for public housing. So that's kind of the high level view at the federal level. At the state level, obviously there's been a lot of discussion with the Sadowski and how that's being funded. What happened at the beginning of session was that the governor proposed nearly $1 billion in funding for flooding and sea level rise, which are obviously 2 very important initiatives at the state. And so the Senate president and the Speaker of the House agreed to take funds from the Sadowski to fund this Resilient Florida program. And even though the governor's budget then recommended fully funding the Sadowski at more than $423 million, new legislation just passed last week, both chambers. It's SB 2512. And what that does is that redistributes the documentary stamp tax. In prior proposals for that legislation, the number was set at $141 million each for affordable housing, wastewater, and resiliency. There was some pushback in the Senate last week when it was on the Senate floor. And so those numbers got altered. Now it is 111 each for wastewater and resiliency and roughly 200 million for affordable housing. And that legislation, as I said, did pass both chambers and is set to be signed by the governor. The numbers in that legislation are likely not going to change. However, the total amount that will be given to affordable housing is likely to change due to federal money that is set to flow from the most recent COVID relief bill. There's opponents to this measure, obviously, that say that this legislation represents a permanent raid to the Sadowski, but the proponents are saying that this is an overall win because it would codify the Sadowski not getting swept because it has a provision in the bill that prohibits funds being transferred to the state, from the state housing trust fund and local government trust fund to the general revenue fund. So it does codify that prohibition on sweeping. And proponents rather are also saying that even though the 200 million is lower than where the governor's proposal has been in the last several years, in years prior, the Sadowski was continuously being swept, and it ended up being funded at around 160 million. So this would set it at roughly 200 million in statute, and again, would prohibit the sweeping of those funds. So that's where that is at currently. Like I said, that legislation did pass both chambers. It's set to be signed by the governor, but the total amount of funds for Sadowski is likely to change due to federal funds that are flowing down. So that's kind of my high level update, both the federal and the state level. Happy to take any questions.
Let's see, are there any questions? Okay, looking to see, I don't see any hands raised. Waving always works because I actually can see you guys. But I don't see any. Thank you, Lauren, for your report.
No problem.
Needless to say, I'm happier than I was a few weeks ago. Let's just go there. Having 2/3 of it previously swept permanently, and being only having 1/3 of the Sadowski funds that were designated for affordable housing, I believe by referendum. So the fact that it has been continually swept is very, very frustrating. I recognize the need to address sea level rise and our septic to sewer needs for infrastructure. However, it's kind of hard to be grateful when you have, large amounts of resources that you really, truly need to support your economy and really need to support families that are in desperate need of finding a place to live in a hot market where we're building homes for people that are moving here rather than the people that are working and living here is frustrating, to say the least. I would like to see or hear what the thought is as our very hot real estate market continues to raise the dock stamp revenue, what that formula looks like. Are we limited to 200 million? Is that our new permanent allocation, or is there a percentage of the dock stamp revenue that's identified? Lauren, can you help me with that one?
Yeah, so great question. So in the legislation, it does not codify the 200 million. It just states a percentage. So people have been, that's been some of the discussion, that number, even this year, shouldn't even be around 200 million, that it should be higher.
Yeah, it should be 400 and change, right?
Because home sales are continuing to go up, and this dock stamp tax is continuing to be collected. And so I think that's just an evolving conversation. And I think that what we will see is that the governor will ultimately address that in how much funding goes towards affordable housing from the funds that the state gets, because affordable housing is such a high priority for the governor. And I mean, he even funded it at 423 million in his budget. I think that's where we're going to see some of those funds made up for. Ultimately, I don't know if that's going to change, like I said, with that legislation that he's set to sign, that percentage that's in there. But again, I think that's just part of the conversation that continues to evolve on this issue and be prioritized among, the wastewater and resiliency, as you stated, are both very high priorities of the state and the governor. So it's just, I think it's a work in progress is the short answer.
Thank you very, very much. I'm going to urge each of the members on this board to send an email or make a phone call to not only the governor, but to the Senate Leader Simpson, as well as House Speaker Sprouse, who actually, represents this area or is part of our delegation, to help them understand how critically important it is to the families of Hillsborough County. Our property values and our rental rates are going up because of the high growth in this area. And it is critically important that these dollars are set aside for the purpose of which they were designed, to assist us in putting together affordable housing for our workforce and those are, that are working, as well as the seniors who live here that are on fixed income, I think, and those with disabilities. All of those individuals need a place to live. And rapidly, they are having limited opportunity to find a place to live in Hillsborough County. And that has to be addressed. So I urge each of you, if maybe, Lauren, if you could get us email addresses to Natasha to send out to each of the board members. And this week, I urge each of you to put in your 2 cents, because I think as we speak to our leaders and our legislators, they do listen. As Ms. Storch mentioned, it is a moving target, and hopefully we can get where we want to go. With that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Howell.
Great. Good morning. Thank you so much, Commissioner. Good morning, board. It's so good to be here this morning. Happy Monday morning. And so we have a number of things that we need to cover this morning. We have officer elections this morning. We're not going to be able to really complete that process, but I know we have Nancy Takamori on the line, and I think it's some things that she wants to share about the officer elections and some of the things that we may need to make adjustments with on the board. Nancy?
Good morning, Cheryl. Yes, since we do not have an in-person quorum, we are not going to be able to do our officer elections at this meeting. Hopefully, we'll be able to accomplish that at your meeting in May, which is scheduled for May 10th. And that's on the second page of your packet, the AHAB meeting schedule. But one other thing I wanted to mention is that your bylaws do provide for a nominating committee, and we were not able to put together a nominating committee. It's difficult enough, as you know, just to convene this meeting under these circumstances and in these times. So one thing that you may want to consider is whether it makes sense for this board to have a nominating committee. That is in your bylaws. It's something that you could take action to change if you so desired. I think at one point this board was composed of 21 members, so it may have made more sense to have a nominating committee when there was such a large board. But certainly, if you want to consider that, it's something that this board could direct staff to do, to make proposed amendments to the bylaws and bring them back to you for consideration. Thank you.
I certainly agree with that as well, Nancy, because the size of the board has really been reduced by 50% since that time. And so the board is able to conduct and take care of more official business during the meeting as well.
Thank you.
But certainly it's the pleasure of the board.
Thank you. And if we were to make changes to the bylaws, I would obviously have to have a quorum to do so. But with that in mind, given that we did not have a nominating committee to make nominations at this point, what would you suggest our process be next month?
Well, you don't actually have to, we could take nominations for consideration at this time if that is the board's preference without a vote on that, and then it's something the board could, that you could all individually consider over time and then would vote on at the elections in the May meeting. But it's not necessary. I mean, I think we could do the nominations at the same time that we have the elections at your May meeting when we have a quorum in person.
Okay. I mean, there is merit in making sure that those that someone might nominate is, has an opportunity to think about it. This is a very active board. We do a lot of good stuff. And, we have We have the Community Land Trust Project. We've got a lot going on. We've got advocacy to do. We have opportunities to address many of the things that Ms. Howell will bring up shortly. We've had an active, robust conversation about our available lands. And so there is a great deal of responsibility in serving on the board, but there's also great opportunity to make a difference. So would it be reasonable to consider taking nominations for consideration for vote next month, so that we can at least then talk about, if someone could have an opportunity to either accept or decline, and then we will know what we're doing next month?
Yes, Commissioner, if you'd like to take nominations at the May meeting and then have the elections at the June meeting, is that what you're suggesting?
No, I'd rather actually take nominations today and then actually have elections on May, because we are 3 months behind, I think, on this process.
Right. Well, certainly you could, we don't need to vote on the nominations. So if people want to make nominations today, you don't need an in-person quorum for that.
Exactly.
And then we can vote at the elections in May, assuming we have a quorum at that time.
Okay, so we won't vote on it today. We'll just have names to consider for each of the positions. And those individuals that are nominated will have an opportunity to think it through and maybe consult with Ms. Howell to understand what the role and responsibilities are. And then we could vote on those nominations or discuss it next month. Is that a reasonable course of action for the board? Okay. Seeing no objections at this point. So, Ms. Takamori, would you be interested in taking nominations for each of the positions?
Absolutely.
Okay, wait, just one more second, please. Ms. Jackson-Sims, do you have a question?
I do, for Ms. Takamori. So does that mean because our bylaws state that this needs to be done through a nominating committee, that the minutes that are taking place today need to reflect that the board is acting as the nominating committee so that there can be no challenges later on?
Good question.
That is an excellent question. And a good point. So we will have the minutes reflect that nominations are accepted from the floor, which is allowed under your bylaws right now. I think the thinking there was that the floor nominations would be made at the meeting where the election takes place. But again, in these times when we've been unable to convene the nominating committee, I think that effectively you are operating as that committee. Okay. Yes.
Ms. Jackson-Sims, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I just don't want us to go through the process and then have someone, even a member of the public, come back later and object to what was done.
Fair question, and I appreciate that concern. Thank you very much for bringing it up. Yes, ma'am.
Furthermore, I was hoping that prior to making nominations...
Okay, hang on one second. There we go. Now we hear you.
Prior to making nominations, could we have a layout of what positions they are and a brief overview of what they entail?
Excellent recommendation. Ms. Takamori, can you help us with that?
Yes, ma'am. There are two positions, the chair and the vice chair, and I can read to you the official description of the duties of the chair and the vice chair as set forth in your bylaws. So the chair position, for that position, it says that the chair shall provide at all meetings of the board, appoint all committees, call special or emergency meetings of the board, and generally perform the customary duties of presiding officer of the board. Following the election of officers, the new chairman or chair may appoint a parliamentarian to serve and advise the board on parliamentary procedures under Robert's Rules of Order. And then for the vice chair position, the vice chair shall serve in the absence of the chair and shall carry out the duties of the absent chair.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So there's basically two positions. Okay.
Right.
All right. Do you want to handle the nominations?
Yeah, sure. So if there are, I'd like to start with the chair position. If there are any nominations for the chair, please raise
I'd
your
like to
hand.
nominate Commissioner Overman for chair.
Second.
And we won't be taking a vote on that. I'm unable to see if there are any virtual.
Oh, okay. So Mr. Rosenwasser has made one nomination for me as Commissioner Overman as chair. Looking to see if I see any waving or any hand raising. I don't see, most people don't have their video camera on.
Okay.
Okay, are there any other nominations for chair?
There are no other nominations, then we'll close that and we'll move on to the vice chair position. Are there any nominations for vice chair? Anybody virtually?
Are we allowed to nominate ourselves?
You are allowed to nominate yourself.
I'd like to put my name in.
Anyone else?
I'm not seeing any other, or hearing anyone. Speak up if you would like to nominate anyone for vice chair.
Okay.
Okay.
If there's no one else, then we'll close those nominations and we will take up the elections, hopefully at the next meeting when we have a quorum. And at that time, if there are any other floor nominations, we'd be able to consider those as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Ms. Howell.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nancy. I certainly appreciate that. We're going to move on with our agenda now. I just wanted to share with you in your package the Tenant Bill of Rights and Resource Ordinance Communication Plan. I certainly hope you have an opportunity to read over that. We've included that as a point of reference for you. So if you're more interested in how this is going to roll out, we certainly want you to be aware of that communication plan. Are there any questions on that?
I would just like to thank the director's office and everybody involved with this. I'm actively involved in a number of community and business associations, one being the Apartment Association, which represents about 800,000 members or units, and they've had a lot of communications. There have been some objections, but I've supported this because I believe it's strong, and they've agreed, and hopefully they're doing they're meeting their obligations, particularly with the source of income. I think that is critical. I know I've trained my staff. We even test our own staff when somebody calls and says, do you take Section 8? We've listed all of our communities, and every one of our members I speak to, I'll check that list to make sure that they're on there, because everybody deserves decent housing.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Rosenwasser.
Ms. Strom, you're recognized.
I apologize.
I'm
sorry. Elizabeth.
That's okay. I have a question, and if this is completely not the right forum for it, then tell me it's not, and I will go away and ask some other way. But I'm just curious what you anticipate, because I know that this Tenants Bill of Rights and especially the source of income requirements has been pretty controversial among property owners, and I'm just wondering if you or anyone else could mention what you anticipate in terms of conflicts or communications problems as you roll this out.
Well, initially, I just think that people may have a misunderstanding about suitability, and so what we're saying is that we're not responsible or for suitability for a resident taking on a unit. All we're saying is that all things the same, credit and all other issues the same, that the source of income won't prohibit them from being able to go into a unit.
Thank you, Ms. Strong. Follow up before I recognize Ms. Jackson Sims.
That was it.
Okay, great. Ms. Jackson Sims.
I have a question. Maybe Director Howell and Mr. Rossman understand, because it's a controversial item. I understand that many landlords are 2.5 months application process. Can that housing voucher be utilized as the source of income to demonstrate? I think we need to clarify, because that I hear a lot of property problems having their vouchers not accepted as a source of income now, so we want to make a problem as we go.
That is.
Point taken.
You want to tell?
No. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Source of income, Section 8 vouchers are required to be considered income, the same as wages, the same as unemployment, the same as alimony, the same as whatever other source that is consistent, not a one-time, as long as Section, yes, is the short answer. Section 8 vouchers have to be included in that qualification. And any landlord that does not include that, in whether it be the 2.5 or 3 times, whatever, is in violation of the statute. And I think that's enforced by code enforcement as well as
Consumer Affairs.
Consumer Affairs.
Consumer Affairs is together.
Consumer Affairs, right.
And so I would remind anybody on this board that if they hear something like that, to contact Consumer Affairs or the code enforcement folks. They are very able to handle that, and there are some pretty strong penalties for those who violate that statute. So please let anybody know that Section 8 is, vouchers are income.
They are income. And to further back that up, the ordinance that was passed on March 3rd actually goes into an enforcement level on July 1st. And so within that Bill of Rights that the Board of County Commission approved on March 3rd, are definitions of income that do make sure that any kind of income, other than what Mr. Rosenwasser mentioned, is those one-time dollars that really are not recurring income that actually contribute to being able to afford rent, right? But specifically any fixed income, veterans income, a variety of different housing related resources that can pay rent are to be considered source of income. And one of the things I wanted to also note is, while the ordinance isn't necessarily in your packet today, it is online and available to review. So I strongly recommend having that available when you're working with individuals, whether it be apartment managers, single-family home managers, or landlords, to really help them come up to speed, because this is new. And part of the reason why I'm very proud of Ms. Takamori, Ms. Howell, as well as our communications department, of putting together this communications plan is to try and stem any confusion about it. Now, the other issue is this is only in place for unincorporated Hillsborough County. So my goal is to reach out to the various different cities to see if they would be willing to consider using a similar type of program to avoid confusion on the consumer's part. Because if you're looking for a place in the city versus in the county, and you find a place in the city, you want to expect the same set of treatment. And that was the goal, is to eliminate the discrimination associated with any kind of source of income measure, other than the right criteria that you would in any normal circumstance in accordance to the law when you're renting a property. So it doesn't eliminate eligibility of criteria, but it does eliminate or attempt to reduce any discrimination when it comes to source of income. Very good question. Thank you. Did you have a follow-up?
I just think that it will help us not have problems when the effective date rolls in July 1, if we can incorporate that into our communication efforts so that we clarify for all parties that are involved that the voucher is to be considered as a source of income at their entry point as well as they're living there.
I think the statute actually requires the tenant bill of rights to be attached to a resident application. so that the person is made aware of their rights and what is required of the landlord, and it has other notice provisions as well. But the purpose is to make sure that the resident knows their rights, make sure the landlords know what the tenant's rights are, and it's a crucial step that was taken.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, there are notice requirements at application, I believe it is.
There's notice requirements at application, there's additional notice requirements
At
on
renewal?
late fees, late notices, when people don't pay their rent on time. It's important, particularly at a time when there are walls between closed doors, I should say, between leasing offices and rental offices and those who are applying for apartments, that there's not always that ability to communicate as you and I are right now. And so it's important that that handout be given so that the person can take it home and look at it, similar to what we just did with nominating committee, and know what their rights are so they're not discriminated against.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Excellent,
Great.
thank you. Are there any other questions? Mr. Powell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Commissioner Overon. I haven't actually had a chance to see the bill in the text form, but two questions I have as it relates to with the income accepting of a voucher. Does that also, if a tenant does have that voucher, would that then force just like a private owner to have to then participate in the Section 8 program and have to register for that if they haven't previously been set up to receive Section 8 payments?
Well, and this is Nancy Takamori. If the prospective tenant is otherwise eligible, the voucher portion of the rent would be considered lawful source of income, and the tenant couldn't, or the prospective tenant could not be declined the opportunity to rent merely because the landlord would be required to participate in the program. So yes, there are certainly administrative requirements for participating in Section 8, and if the tenant is qualified, the landlord could not decline to rent to the tenant merely because the landlord has to abide by those administrative requirements of Section 8.
And Mr. Powell, just so you know, the landlord still has the right to establish whatever criteria is they want, providing it's not discriminatory, of course, to qualify. And what the apartment association has been doing is basically telling every owner, every landlord, to apply with THA, so that when that resident comes in, they're not held up in that process. There's inspections, there's registration, there's a whole lot of things that are required. THA has been doing a fantastic job. I know that was a big concern that many people had, but THA is doing a fantastic job keeping up with the processing of the applications, as well as the inspections and the paperwork. They have not slowed down one bit, and I applaud Leroy Moore and his team. They have gone above and beyond to assist this community. And you mentioned before it's only unincorporated Hillsborough County. We as a company, having, 30 communities in the Bay Area, we've attached, we basically apply it to all properties, regardless of whether they be located in the city of Tampa. It may not be enforceable, but we want to set an example.
Excellent, thank you.
And then my next question, maybe Ms. Techmore could help with this. If a prospective tenant, has, let's say, a voucher for $1,500 and like the monthly rent for a particular property they're looking at is, the same amount, is that voucher enough for like the income requirement? So if a landlord, say, has, they have to have 3 times like the monthly income, for qualify for that particular property, is the voucher alone because it covers the rent? Is that enough? Or is it just, that $1,500 is applicable and adds to whatever maybe additional sources, of income that they have?
I hope I'm understanding the question correctly, but the voucher needs to be included as part of the income that the tenant brings to the table. So if the tenant's paying $300 and the voucher is covering $1,500, the landlord should look at whether the tenant can fund the $300 and then consider the voucher for the additional portion. Did that answer your question?
Well, no. So, and I'm just trying to understand. So, for my own knowledge, so let's just maybe I'll make it easier, like easier numbers. The particular property is, $1,000, and the owner requires, 3 times the monthly rent. So they have to show that they're making or grossing $3,000 a month. If they have a voucher that is for, $1,000, and maybe they only have, income of $500, so they've, that's like $1,500. Is that $1,000 voucher just good enough for them to be able to qualify, or is the voucher is $1,000, they have income of $500, so it's $1,500, and so that is what their monthly income is. I'm just trying to understand like how what's the weight, I guess, of the voucher.
I think I'll jump in here for a second, Mr. Powell, and say that the voucher is income. So if you don't separate that, the voucher is income. And the way that the Section 8 system is set up so that, the tenant will pay 30% of their income. But if they have a voucher that covers that amount and the unit falls in that, in the fair market rent, if it doesn't exceed the fair market rent, then those computations will come out to where the tenant would qualify for that particular unit under that scenario that you just listed. But what I want to say is I want to be really clear to say that voucher should not be seen as something different from cash. That voucher is income, and it would be considered the same type of income as a wage, as a Social Security pension benefit, or any one of those, if that helps you.
Right. No, and I understand that the voucher is income. I'm just trying to understand, is it in the scenario that I propose, if an owner is requiring 3 times, as an income qualification, 3 times the monthly rent on $1,000 unit, so let's say apartment, so they need to show they're making $3,000 a month. They only have a voucher of $1,000 that covers up to $1,000, and then they make another $500, so they have $1,500. In that scenario, they would not qualify.
Correct.
Is what I'm saying, or would they qualify?
Mr. Powell?
I'm not sure. I think you may. I would just encourage you to speak to maybe your attorney, because you don't want to get into fair housing issues, access to fair housing. I wouldn't be able to answer that particular scenario in this setting.
Ms. Howell, just a second, please. I would like to give Mr. Rosenwasser, who has experience with this. I think what I'm hearing is, if the landlord's criteria is $3,000 and there is a $1,000 voucher and they have a $1,500 of other income, then they would not typically qualify because they don't have 3 times the income.
That is correct.
Is that correct,
That
Mr. Russell?
That is correct, Commissioner. Simply having a voucher that covers the entire portion of the rent does not qualify an applicant to be approved. The 3 times, let's say the rent is $1,000, if they're using it 3 times, and that is up to the landlord to decide, then the person has to prove income of $3,000, and that $3,000 would be made up of all sources of income, including the voucher and everything else. So that's an important question because a lot of us in the industry are reducing our standards. If a person has a voucher that is substantial, we can't, it's not, our concern is making sure the rent is paid, but our concern is also making sure that the people can put food on the table and get the medicines they need and everything else. And that's why there's qualification standards. So it is a source of income, but it doesn't meet the voucher amount. If it's the same as the rent, does not automatically qualify that applicant.
Thank you very much.
Can I make a comment?
Ms. Burton, you're recognized.
Thank you. And I would just like to say that that is how residents see this economic racism holding up the ability for people to find decent and affordable housing. Residents cannot be eligible for a certain voucher amount if then on the side they have 3 times that income to satisfy the landlord. And what landlords, I think, if they're honest, will have an understanding that most of these vouchers are doable for a full year of rent. So it's not like I can produce additional under the table income to satisfy the landlord and still be within qualification of the voucher. And I would hope that in monitoring how residents are having to navigate through some of this stuff, which is very nasty, that I don't know if you could do it on your end, but if people are going to participate in some of these federal programs, that as the residents are having to jump through 50 hoops just to secure a key to an apartment, that there'll be some financial consequences to landlords if they're then attempting to put these additional landmines in place that will limit their willingness to participate in some of these federal programs.
Very well said.
Very well taken too. It is a concern. It's a messy business, and the good news is at least now the income of a voucher can be, and by law is required to be considered as income. The standards that landlords have, it's private business. They have the right to set the standards, but they're no longer allowed to discriminate against an individual with a housing voucher, whether it be a HUD or veterans or otherwise. So we're not going to solve all the problems here, but we've made some significant progress in that respect. And we're going to continue to work on those things. Ms. Jackson-Sims.
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but we are the Affordable Housing Advisory Board. And I think that we have to pay particular attention to what Ms. Burton just said, which is why I brought the point up in the first place, because it's happening right now, and it's happening more in anticipation of our bill coming out on the street, and it is being used as a mechanism to weed out voucher candidates. And we need to recognize that, and we need to be aware that it is happening in our community, And if we can do more education so that our landlords understand the best rent that you will ever get is going to be your check from the federal government, because that's the only one that when you sign that piece of paper, you're guaranteed to receive. You can find someone that has 3 times the income, and they may not be working tomorrow, and you'll spend the next 6 months trying to get them out of your unit. So on our part, if we can, because we know that this is happening, and if we don't know, we only have to hear from the Tampa Housing Authority. And I do see that, I believe David is online today. So we only have to listen to the comments that are coming from their assisted housing department that administers the voucher program throughout the county. And I know that Mark, if I may say Mark, and his organization have been faithful in doing what they can about this. But all of us from our very respective areas that we represent on this committee need to be aware that this is happening and need to continue to talk to people to stop this new form of discrimination in our community.
Thank you. Thank you very much for bringing that up. I appreciate that.
And that's why I represent the low-income populace on this board.
And I do appreciate that. That it is important for us to look for ways that individuals are choosing to discriminate. And that's part of the reason why the bill was put into place in the first place. But we have to continue to stay vigilant and looking for opportunities to improve opportunities for many of our working and individuals that are working and still need a place to live, to raise their family.
Howell has raised his hand.
Ms. Howell, do you have a question?
No.
Oh,
Cody Powell,
Mr. Powell,
Mr.
you're
Powell.
recognized.
Thank you, Commissioner Overman. My only other last question, and I was just able to find the ordinance. I didn't see anything in here as it related to evictions, and I was hoping that there would have been something in here to sort of dissuade what happened to the tenants over in Ybor City area that were just moved out with no notice. Do we have any ability to put something in place through maybe this ordinance or a different ordinance to make a severe penalty for just up and moving people out illegally to some sort of hefty fine? I mean, like significant fine, so where it's just, it doesn't make sense, for an owner, to do that, because, what happened to, for those tenants was just terrible. So I was hoping that we had that, ability to do something, on the local level, through the tenant ordinance or, a different ordinance.
There are a lot of moving parts going on in the eviction prevention world right now. There's several bills right now at the state to actually better or improve the tenant's position when it comes to evictions, just to make sure that they're notified of their rights. A lot of that is in the works right now. So there are provisions for tenants' rights, and we are actually looking at a standing up, possibly, we've got to find the resources for managing it, but standing up a mediation process for individuals that are where it's either pending or has been filed an eviction, so that there's an opportunity to reduce that. I'm not sure we would have been able to fix the Ybor situation. I'm not as familiar with that as I probably need to be, but I did hear that it was not right. In that respect, or it just didn't appear to be in the way that things ought to work. So, but we are working on that, and we last month we did have a presentation on the process of developing some strategy to avoid evictions. We've taken more of a preventative approach with that strategy, but in a lot of it is still in the development stage. But I assure you, we're working on that as well. Ms. Howell, you may have some comments that you'd like to offer to answer that question as well.
Right. So right now we're waiting to see what happens at the state level. And so certainly if it happens at the state level, it will certainly preempt whatever we could do here at the local level. But if we don't have anything concrete that occurs at the state level, we are currently working on a plan right now and bringing all the partners together to address the eviction process itself, so that we can intervene pre and post in that process.
I might point out that the eviction process is a civil process, and many judges, in fact, all the judges that my company has been in front of, will automatically recommend that it go to mediation. The eviction process is an important process because it does not only relate to the non-payment of rent. It relates to the residents following the rules and regulations of that community, being a good neighbor. Sometimes we have to evict residents because they're harassing other neighbors, and it's something that the police don't want to get involved in. But what I'm very disappointed about in my industry is those owners who are doing an end around and just doing a non-renewal as opposed to an eviction. And that is something that they're permitted to do. It's private owners' rights. I know that I would support something in that area, which would probably be an adverse position to those who are in my industry. I don't believe an end-around move like that is appropriate, but evictions certainly are appropriate for the right reasons, particularly for the betterment of the lives of the others who live in that community.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Rosenwasser.
Thank you.
I recognize Madam Chair.
Is that Councilman Goods? I can't.
Yes, ma'am.
I need you to get a little bit closer to the mic so I can hear you a little better. You're recognized.
Can you hear me now?
Just
Yes.
barely, yes.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm on this city still. It's a city still, and I'm out of town. But the problem you have is when you talk about these landlords renewals, the housing market is booming. They're looking at dollars and cents, and what we have to understand is we have to fight Tallahassee, because look like our apprenticeship programs, all things are being attacked in Tallahassee. So we have to make sure we urge our legislators who are up there in Tallahassee, the problems that are happening here locally. And I think that's our major problem is Tallahassee. I just want to put that out, because the minute you try to put a local ordinance in, Tallahassee is going to say you're hurting developers, you're hurting the economy by doing certain things. So I think we have to make sure we have a big fight in Tallahassee to try to get some things blocked so these things don't be occurring.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilman Goods.
May I make one more comment, please, Commissioner?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I do not want to disagree that Tallahassee do stroke a serious pen, but I also want to appeal to people's moral compass. And what the residents and working class people are beginning to see, especially, and I'm just looking at the landscape of what's being available as affordable and as what is being then forwarded down to the courthouse and eviction, it is ramping up very, very severely. And so while Tallahassee might have a strong hand, the moral compass of this community have to take some leadership. And for Tampa, the Tampa body of legal government, I'm extremely critical of, because what I see occurring is what is being described in our community is a cleansing of Black culture and Black residents. And so we might be in a free market and people could do what they want because it is their property, but the sanitizing of Black faces, families that are being part of the rental community is something that morally, hopefully, if people still have that, leadership will be fighting like heck to make sure that our community just don't hide, and leadership don't hide behind this theory that the market will dictate this nastiness. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burton. I do appreciate your sentiments, for sure. With that, I don't see any other hands raised. Ms. Howell, next item is the available land report.
Yes, ma'am. And so I wanted to come back to the board with an available land report. We introduced a process to you a couple of months ago about the number of available lands we had and the processes that we will be utilizing to utilize or dispense of those properties. And currently, we reviewed 68 available sites. We have scored those, and we're utilizing a panel to score and to continue to review that information. We have an upcoming RFP where we will include 17 of the properties, and they'll be made available for development. We are looking at land banking or utilizing 32 properties for community land trust or land banking. And we have identified 19 of those properties that will be released back to real estate for disposal. Okay.
Excellent, thank you. And to the question I always ask is like, okay, I want to see where's the proceeds of the 19 properties going? And I've been assured that they come back to Affordable Housing for Resources, which is great. And
yes, ma'am.
Thank you very, very much.
Great.
Are there any questions regarding the available land report? Seeing none, the ERAP funding report, Ms. Howell?
Okay, I really wanted to bring back this as informational to you. The county and the city together is doing a program for rental assistance. Collectively, they received $42 million for rental assistance. The rental assistance can be for up to 12 months. The county is administering those funds, and so applications can be submitted online. And I want to say that we sent out some information on that. I will get some additional information sent out to you today. We have a priority of families 50% and below that we initially took applications for, and now it has really been removed to families up to 80% and below median family income. And as I said, we can pay back rent. And I want to say they are even considering paying rent for up to 3 months as well. And so a great program for people who are really still in need and have not been able to regain their income and or still behind in their rental payments.
Thank you. And I would say I just have to celebrate Audrey Ziegler and her team. Because the county has done such an excellent job of managing our housing assistance program, it was one of the reasons why the city agreed to actually partner with us to be able to make this work. Honestly, we should be very proud of the county's response to this. There are other counties that are just now trying to figure out how to do it. And we've done a remarkable job, not only with the first batch, but also with this batch, which should set us up very well for any future resources that come down the pike. So I just want to say thank you to the county staff and to the city to working together to be able to make sure that these dollars are available for those that are in need. Ms. Howell?
Yes, and I also want to say that this is just for rent, but for home ownership assistance, we do have some mortgage money available for homeowners who have fallen behind in their mortgage to prevent foreclosure. So we have some additional agencies that is administering those funds, but they're doing on behalf of the counties of affordable housing team. So we are considering our homeowners in this process as well, so they're not being left behind.
Ms. Howell, is that an income test eligibility as well?
Yes, it's up to 80% median family income.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Are there any other questions? I thought I heard someone. Ms. Combs, you're recognized.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. My question was, can we get an update on where we are with the land trust? I know the last time we spoke, it was put out to a consultant, and just trying to get a timeline on where we are with that.
We are bringing the agreement back to the board. So.
Okay, great. So what does that mean for our board and our committee?
It means we have to have a quorum at the next meeting. So that we can make a recommendation to the BOCC to approve.
It means that we'll have an actual formal agreement and they can begin the workout plan. Yes.
Thank you.
We have several other items that I took to the board, and you can review those at your leisure. And finally, I want to say that we have our affordable housing newsletter. We are featuring this month New Life Village. We had a public facility project out at New Life Village. We'll be doing a ribbon cutting on that this month. And so I urge you to read over the newsletter, look at some of the wonderful things that we're doing in affordable housing and some of our partner agencies. We're just so proud of the body of work that's been done throughout the county. And guys, I wish everybody would have had a chance to be there this past Friday at the ribbon cutting with Blue Sky and with Metropolitan Ministries. I'm so proud to say that, in the Hillsborough County area, Blue Sky and some of our other nonprofits as well are seeing the real benefit in partnering up with our nonprofit agencies. I think that's a real game changer. It's not something that's happening all over this state or all over this nation. This is something that's really special that's happening here. And so, I just want to give our partners our kudos, whether they're public or private. We have a lot of participants in this project, and I was just very, very proud to see it roll out and to be able to engage with some of the residents. And so I look forward to our next one. Right, Sarah?
There you go. And if you could make sure all the board members are aware of New Life Village's ceremony, so that if there's an opportunity for them to actually attend and rah-rah and get excited, that sounds great. I will say the attending on Friday was, for Save a Place, was very powerful. It just, when you get to see, and you have the residents walk up and just say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. It helps remind us of why it's so critically important that the work we do here and what it means to the people who have a safe place to live.
Is New Life Village that property located down on 41 next to Bristol Bay Apartments?
Yeah. It's
it is.
It's a cool
It's a
program.
cool place. The concept of its original concept, I'm not sure they're still doing it, I was involved with it, of having seniors there to assist young people whose parents are both working when those young people come home, and help them with homework and make sure that they have a snack and those kind of things. It's a wonderful, wonderful facility.
And it's a great home for many children that have been in the foster system or are adoptive. It's just everything about it I just totally love. And so, yeah, I would love to have an opportunity to celebrate their success in moving this project forward that I know they've been working on for a couple of years, 3 years more, if not more than that. So look forward to it.
Great. And I want to say that's all for me, Commissioner. Thank you.
Okay, great. Is there any old business? Any new business?
Commissioner Overman, that we recognize.
Is that Councilman Goods?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you're recognized, sir.
We have to be a trendsetter for this board. When I hear the word workforce housing always that's talked about, that's the new word. but it's not a good word for all. And, people are using that as a new crutch for workforce housing and everything they do. And I wonder if Ms. Howell can research, or this board can look at maybe defining workforce and essential workforce. Those are two different things. And when I hear people talk about workforce housing, that's not the everyday average person. That's not our workforce. And I'd like to look and see if this board can kind of change the narrative and get a new word out there in the streets of looking at essential workforce. Because the essential workforce is your Walmart, your local mom and pop stores. Those are your lower income areas folks. And we have to recognize that when we're talking about housing, and not necessarily poor people, but there are a lot of people who are just struggling to make it. They're not poor, but they're in that essential workforce category versus actual the workforce that they define for certain other careers. And I think it's hurting, I'm saying the market, but it's hurting the culture of getting people into housing. So I think Ms. Howell, if she can look into that, maybe this board change the narrative and get a new word out there, and people understand what essential workforce, and be able to change that narrative a little bit.
Great. I absolutely will. I think they got workforce housing, they have attainable housing, they have affordable housing, they got low income housing, they got all of these different terms that they use, and they use them interchangeably, but typically for the benefit of the population that they're speaking to. So, I can certainly bring back some definitions that we can look at and say, you know what, when this board speaks as a board, that this is how it's defined, and what the intent is. So absolutely.
Excellent points.
Thank you.
Excellent points. Yeah, you are right. I've got into it with several consultants at one point in time. It's like, okay, which language are you trying to use here, and what audience are you attempting to serve? Because it wasn't the range that we've been working in this area in terms of our development. And I think that's really important as we work in the future to encourage additional affordable housing partners. Those individuals who can develop properties and make properties available for individuals who live here and work here, but live here and also have grown up here, have had their whole lives here and are retired here. To make sure that they have a safe place over their head, I think is also very important. So we need to, having a definition or a conversation about that in the future doesn't hurt. Just a reminder, everyone, we should be receiving an email with contact information to our legislators. Please remember to get that out as soon as possible. Write it in your own words, help them understand the importance of our mission, and why actually protecting the Sadowski Trust is so critically important for our mission. Tomorrow morning is at 10 a.m., I believe, is the Sadowski affiliates will have their webinar. Take a look for that information. And also take advantage of the Florida Housing Coalition webinars that can also give you some assistance in getting caught up on what's going on in their world and how affordable housing is solving problems. With that, seeing no other hands or hand wavings, I will call the meeting adjourned. Thank you very much for being here today.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
See you all on May 10th.
Thanks so much.